Yep, no, I know you do, but
Thank you,
it's fine.
Senator Rennick. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for attending tonight. My questions are from a much lower level of understanding than Senator Rennick, so bear with me, please. There's been a headline, quote, "Weak CPI will push the RBA to $150 billion new bond splash in August." Could I understand that, please? The Reserve Bank uses central bank reserves to purchase $150 billion worth of Australian bonds to stimulate the economy. Is that right?
Yeah, we've actually bought, we've said we're actually going to buy 200, so it's actually more than that.
Okay.
Is what we've announced to date.
So where do the central bank reserves come from?
So when we buy a bond we buy it from a bank, but the bank often can buy it from someone else who owns it. But the actual transaction we do is we buy a bond from a bank and we credit that bank's account with us, and so that's a liability on our balance sheet, and the asset is the government bond that we hold.
So it's a journal entry that creates the money?
Electronic? Yes.
Yeah, electronic journal, yeah. Thank you. How much have you increased the central bank reserves since the COVID restrictions started? I understand it's 100 billion, then another 100 billion, and now 150, which is really 200.
I can answer the question as of today. No, this is as of the 26th of May, sorry. Not as of today.
Okay.
So back in March 2020, the size of our balance sheet was 180 billion. As of 26 May, it was 450 billion. So 270.
Thank you.
Difference.
Will this money go to the banks to facilitate yet more overheating of the home loan market?
So are we trying to provide stimulus to the economy? Yes. Does it lead only to flow of new lending for housing? No. We're actually, today, for instance, we saw a pickup in business investment. Very much in the national accounts today, sorry. So yes, is some of it flowing into the housing market, as we were talking about just a minute ago? Yeah, it is.
So the next question
we don't direct where it goes though. But.
The next question is along those lines. Will there be earmarks, such as a sum that banks must dedicate to small business lending? Or surely a composition of the economic activity goes to the security and resilience of the economy.
Sure. So
can you direct it?
So do we direct it? No. One thing we have done is, so we have provided this term funding facility to banks where if they increase their lending to small business, SME businesses, sorry to be precise, then that we provide them more funding than if you just increase your lending for housing.
So that's almost an incentive to lend to small business.
Well, that was designed. Well,
yeah.
it is. It's not almost. It is an incentive to lend, and we designed it to be such. Yeah.
So it's really up to the banks, but you can indirectly pull a couple of levers there to send money to certain areas.
So we have set up that scheme exactly to do that. Yeah.
Could you send it to, say, if you wanted to agriculture, export industries, trade industries?
I think we're not in the business of picking sectors. If the government can, if they feel so inclined, can have policies to, we're set settings for the aggregate economy rather than particular sectors in it. If the government so chooses, that's up to them.
So following up on something from what Senator Rennick said, we'd actually been using the term a lot, productive capacity. If this money that you're introducing is used for productive capacity or increasing productive capacity such as power stations, railways, ports, is there an inflationary effect of using quantitative easing funds for infrastructure?
So if we increase the supply capacity of the economy, then yeah, that does increase, the ability of the economy to grow both now and in the future. That's right. I mean, yeah.
Does the Reserve Bank see a limit on how much money it can print? Or
well, in the end, and history has shown over a few hundred years that if you do go too far down this route, that can go astray. Yeah.
It's an interesting question because
how far? Don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I first asked that similar question about quantitative easing of John Fraser when he was Treasury Secretary in around about October 2016, and he pretty much laughed at me. Then the second Senate estimates in March, he said, well, we have got some concerns, but we don't seem to be able to see them. Then he admitted it in the next one. So I'm not accusing him of anything, but there seems, he said, ultimately he said on the third set of estimates questions that a lot of people were surprised in his position around the world that we hadn't hit that limit yet. So you're saying the limit's still some way down the road?
Well, we haven't hit that limit yet. That is indeed true.
Thank you. The US deficit over the 1920 and the 2021 financial years is looking to come in at around 8 trillion Australian dollars for the 2 years.
Yep.
Are you seeing a reduced appetite for Australian government bonds as cash diverts to fund this massive deficit? And do you anticipate such a problem?
So, no, we're not. And you, I don't know if, I assume you got Rob Nick on the AFM at some point, but the demand we're seeing that he's seeing that for Australian government bonds is actually pretty strong.
Yeah, that's what I've understood.
At the moment, have no reason to suspect that won't continue to be so.
Okay.
Senator Roberts, how much further have we got to go? Because Senator Walsh did have some further questions, and Senator McKim has questions as well, and we do need to finish up at 7.
One topic, and I think they'll be pretty
at
brief.
8, sorry?
Sorry?
Yep, one topic.
One topic. I've got 3 questions. I think they'll be pretty quick.
Okay, can you move through them as quickly
So
as
moving
possible?
on, changing now completely to moving on to the new payment platform. Firstly, good job on the level of communication, because these monthly bulletins, very informative for my staff, briefing, they're excellent. The largest single transaction, just out of curiosity, the largest single transaction on the NPP was one transaction for $19.8 billion. So we've got to ask, who the hell paid $19.8 billion in one transaction?
I don't know the answer to that one off the top of my head. That one I really will have to take on notice.
This is not from government to government. It's another transaction.
Well,
Anyway.
Well, it's probably, if it's a private sector transaction, it's probably private. But can we take that on notice?
Yes, please. The new payment platform has processed $1.7 trillion in financial transactions. Does that include transactions across international borders, or is this just domestic transactions?
This is only domestic. So this is between Australian banks.
Within Australia?
Within Australia. There might be transactions that... no, it's basically between banks in Australia. So it's not... There's no international banks that would be translating US dollars into Australian dollars here. It is only Australian banks.
Thank you. Last question, Chair. In a previous question some time ago, the Reserve Bank assured me that the data is secure within the new payment platform and the companies processing the transactions can't see the data. Has the security of the new payment platform data ever been independently audited? And I say that because the Reserve Bank Governor has called the NPP a data-rich environment, so I'm wondering who's enjoying those riches.
Well, the way the new payments platform is organised, the data sits with the individual financial institutions. It doesn't sit in the platform itself. There's no central hub. The data sits with
no central data hub.
There's no central data hub. And there's no central switch either. It sits with the individual financial institutions, and they talk directly bilaterally to one another using a decentralised network. That's how it works. So the security of the data is all about the security of the data in the individual financial institutions.
So has the system ever been audited?
The individual banks...
Well, just the system, the new payment.
So we do seek assurance on that, and we've
looking at the
endpoint security right at the moment again.
That's Swift endpoint security,
Yeah.
so that's a different concept again. So there's the network itself individually, Swift. It's Swift communication hubs, if you like, and the banks individually have to give affirmations or ascertain to NPP that they've met the various security requirements on their equipment, if you like, their hubs that they've got within their own environments. So they have to do that.
Do you audit that?
We don't audit it, no. No.
Does MPPA?
Does NPPA, they don't audit the individual financial institutions. They ask for the individual financial institutions to attest to them that they have met the various security
Can we confirm
requirements.
with you on notice whether there's an independent audit of that? Because in some of those attestations, that is then of a bank, they will then need to have their own
Yep,
audit opinion on that.
that'd be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roberts.